Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art and culture, and this is Billboard Breakdown. And just like that, the summer lull gets burst wide open, and there's a part of me that couldn't be happier. Yeah, I could definitely raise questions about why, to say nothing of the viability of both some of our new songs and the new number one that triggered it, but I have to admit, the past couple of weeks have been so stagnant that there's a part of me that's thrilled that there's change at all. Of course, the second I start thinking that, I look at our new number one, I deflate just a little bit. Most cause it's Cheap Thrills by Sia featuring Sean Paul. This is Sia's first ever number one hit on the Hot 100, and she got it with an only kind of decent song that was intended for Rihanna and definitely sounds the part, only salvaged from some truly atrocious production choices with the guest verse from Sean Paul, with this being his biggest hit in nearly a decade. But hell, sounding like Rihanna has been big this year for a number of artists, and Sia's probably been the most successful, holding on to some big sales, partially thanks to a well-timed discount, heavy airplay momentum, and just enough YouTube and streaming to take the number one spot. It was all enough to push back One Dance by Drake featuring Kyle and WizKid down to number two as airplay and sales seem to be shrinking, but huge streaming means we're gonna be stuck with this song for a little bit longer. But it's got some competition from This Is What You Came For by Calvin Harris and Rihanna, which rose up to number three on dominant YouTube, good streaming and sales, and real airplay momentum. All of which Can't Stop the Feeling by Justin Timberlake doesn't seem to have, especially with significant sales and airplay losses down number four. And yet I can see it holding steady over Don't Let Me Down by the Chainsmokers featuring Dae Dae, which also took airplay and sales losses but managed to cling on to number five. I do see it facing competition from Ride by 21 Pilots though, which might have slipped a little bit on sales but still has enough airplay and streaming momentum to keep it at number six. Then there's Needed Me by Rihanna at number seven, which is all airplay and bigger streaming to compensate for its awful sales, although those airplay gains are kind of leveling off. I don't know if it's going to get much higher. Then we have Don't Mind by Kent Jones at number eight, which actually picked up a spot thanks to airplay losses dropping off just enough to stabilize, certainly more than Panda by Designer Day, which fell in all categories down number nine. And with Send My Love to Your New Lover by Adele holding on to number 10 with potent airplay momentum and some decent enough streaming and sales, I can predict that Panda will be out of the top 10 pretty soon. And on that note, our losers and dropouts. Big week in the latter category, mostly characterized songs by the end of their runs pretty naturally, like Pillow Top by Zayn, Me, Myself, and I by G-Eazy featuring Bebe Rexha, Came Here to Forget by Blake Shelton, and thankfully, T-Shirt by Thomas Rhett. And yeah, You Don't Own Me by Grace featuring G-Eazy also dropped out prematurely, but it took Noise by Kenny Chesney out with it, so I'm not complaining that much. And I'm mostly positive on some of our losers too, most of which fall into the category of dropping out gracefully, like Dangerous Woman by Ariana Grande falling to 36, Close by Nick Jonas featuring Tove Lo at 41, Lost Boy by Ruth B at 43, and mercifully Let It Go by James Bay at 32. That song really has stuck along too long. And that's not counting songs that just outright suck, like Toothbrush by DNCE at 54, Uber Everywhere by Main TYO down to 69, and Wake Up by Fetty Wap at 70, with probably Wasted Time by Keith Urban being the best of those songs at 76. The only weird case is Unsteady by X-Ambassadors falling off its gains a few weeks ago and living up to the title at 61, but I'm not all that surprised. It's an awkward song for both the band and mainstream radio, so it's not a surprise that it's struggling. Where things seem to get a little bit weirder are in our gains and re-entries, with the only returning song being Come and See Me by Party Next Door featuring Drake. Look, at this point, I've long ago given up trying to find the appeal of Party Next Door when there's so many other heavily auto-tuned acts that do his shtick better, so I have no idea why he's back at 98. Other tracks make a little bit more sense. I Hate You, I Love You by Nash featuring Olivia O'Brien picks up traction to 35 despite being boring as tar. Famous by Kanye West featuring Rihanna makes considerable recovery up to 71. Called It. From the Ground Up by Dan and Shay remains the inevitable wedding song that even my little sister thinks is too saccharine, rising up to 48. And You and Me by Mark E. Basie featuring G-Eazy gains momentum up to 80 because of course crap like this will pick up momentum. Oh joy. But really, the shifts on the charts aren't where things got interesting this week. No, that comes with our 10 new arrivals, starting off with number 97, Sex With Me by Rihanna.
All this all work, no vacation. Stay up off my Instagram, pure temptation. Hit a switch on a fake nigga like a station. Sex with me so amazing. Sex with me so amazing.
Okay, to start this off, Yes. Okay, but seriously, are we now at this point with Rihanna's singles that she's gonna just go to her bonus tracks for singles now? Did you just forget that Desperado might be one of the best songs that you've ever made in years, Rihanna, that actually had something of an edge? This, well, I get why it's the obvious candidate for release. It's got that twinkling gloss against your standard trap beat and enough auto-tune to smooth away the rough edges, and Rihanna bragging about sex with her is so amazing, and spending the rest of the song with half-connected booze and sex references that, thanks to the overdone vocal production, just isn't all that sexy to me. And look, I get what is considered sexy is entirely up to debate, but there's no thrill or edge to this song compared to other tracks that I should probably stop mentioning at this point. I'm not gonna say this is bad, it goes down easy enough, there's no egregious problems with it, but it's also not really all that interesting. And for Rihanna, that's the last thing she needs right now. Number 96, What You Mean, I by Dae Dae. Okay, how to explain this guy? Well, honestly, not a lot to say. Atlanta MC, signed with 300, dropped a mixtape that went nowhere, got one song remixed by Young Dro that somehow went viral, and here we are. And yet, yeah, I don't particularly hate this. Yeah, it's not really all that good. Dae Dae reminds me a bit of a cross between 2 Chainz and Future with his voice. The cheap, oily organ squeal and vocal samples of the production barely has enough momentum or swell to back this guy up. And instead of pushing harder on his second verse or hook, he falls back into auto-tune crooning that completely kills all of his momentum. But you know what? His first verse had a decent flow, and he does have some personality behind him, even if the content leaves a fair bit to be desired. I don't know, if you like this guy, give him some meatier production, something that could balance against his latter tones, he could have some more potential. But then again, given how many other Atlanta MCs and people trying to rip off Atlanta are fighting for the spotlight right now, I don't expect to hear more from this guy. Just saying. Number 90, A Little More Summertime by Jason Aldean.
Forever and ever, ever left these arms if only I had a little more summertime.
So, okay, I didn't exactly mind Jason Aldean's lead-off single from his upcoming album, They Don't Know, which is dropping in early September this year. But when he followed it up with such an obvious play for summer radio, almost a month too late for it to really matter, well, okay, yeah, I was kind of skeptical. Especially as Jason Aldean doesn't really bring a lot of emotional range to what you would typically expect going in for a lighthearted summer party jam. And turns out, he didn't make that, instead falling in line with a similar sort of wistful longing for a lost summer fling like what Luke Bryan did with Roller Coaster. And while I wouldn't quite say it's as good as that song, the stiff popping beat and very muted keys that opened up the song, they didn't really need to be there, especially when real drums are gonna come in anyway. And for some reason, that little sandy rustle that ran through the entire song and felt at the same volume as the guitars, it didn't need to be there either. But overall, this isn't a bad song. Jason Aldean plays melancholy fairly well with some decent lyrics, and I actually didn't mind the more watery guitar tones that filled up some of the background on the hook. No, it's not better than Roller Coaster. I still think Scotty McCreery's tremendously underrated feel-good summer song is the gold standard for this sort of song, but you know what? I don't really mind this, and most of the time I actually like it, so yeah, I'll take this. Number 89, No Shopping by French Montana featuring Drake.
All about the moolah, all about the moolah. Word to the bird, I ain't never take a first shot. Running through them keys way before Cali. Running with the pushes way before Malice. Word to the 5, I'm the one like 4 minus. Caught off the rebound, Ben Wallace gave her $4.
So remember how a few weeks ago I discussed how nobody in Toronto really cares that Tory Lanez keeps going at Drake? Well, truly nobody cares anywhere with how much Joe Budden's going at Drake. And Joe Budden's a member of Slaughterhouse and widely known as a potent MC in his own right. And you know what? That's a damn shame that nobody cares, because his diss track Wake was easily better than anything that the Drake Meek Mill beef produced. So you would think that Drake would probably just ignore it like he ignores everything else. But he actually did throw a punch back on a guest verse on this French Montana song, which puts Drake in negative numbers because he can't even put up his own song together to handle this. And that's before you get to how painfully weak all this is. French Montana drops his standard party verse against very muted melodies and a punchier bass until the clapping trap beat drops in around the edges. But the story is Drake shots back at Joe Budden, and wow, I am not impressed. For one, given that I run down Bloor Street at least once a week, I can say right out of the gate that Drake could afford to go something more more upscale if he wants to make a real impression on anybody from Toronto. And even with that, most of his lines are just bragging about the possibility that his crew could come harder. Well, Drake, I heard views in most of your last couple projects. If there's firepower and there's a possibility there, I'm not seeing it. And when you throw in lines about you being a baby boy and reaffirming your commitment to Birdman, yeah, no dude, I thought you were gonna go independent. I'm not impressed by this. If you're gonna fight back, Drake, throw some real bars out there, because right now, you're letting our city down, because this song, pretty mediocre. Number 84, Body Say by Demi Lovato.
Speed it up, baby, make me sweat. Dreamland. Take me there, 'cause I want your sex. If my body in the sight, I wouldn't turn away. Touch, make love, taste you. If my body told the truth, baby, I would do just what I want to.
So when I heard that Demi Lovato wasn't going to be releasing any more singles off her most recent album, Confident, I was actually pretty okay with that. She's got the 2 legitimately great songs out, might as well avoid generic singles and refocus on a new project. I was a little bit more skeptical when I heard she was going more towards the sexy R&B direction, which might not take the best advantage of her more raw firepower, but she is plenty capable of underplaying when she needs to, so I had hopes this song would turn out pretty well. And well, it's not better than Confident or Cool for the Summer, and you can definitely tell she worked with Nick Jonas's production team with the cavernous mix, the rougher snap, and the thicker bass hits, but this is actually a pretty solid song. Unlike most of her Disney peers, Demi Lovato actually understands subtlety and sensuality, which definitely comes through in her vocals. But what makes this song actually click for me is the tension in the lyrics. Demi's mind has a firm hold on the situation, but you can tell that her body's aching for something deeper. Perhaps just a fantasy, but that's plenty. And it's implied well enough to leave more up to the imagination. In other words, this song actually is sexy as all hell and shows a fully mature side of Demi Lovato that displays a lot of versatility as a performer. I might personally prefer her rougher, more rock side, if only because you don't get a lot of that in mainstream radio these days. But if she wants to push in this direction for a bit and away from the sterile pop that unfortunately filled up too much of Confident, well, damn, I'm on board. It's a pretty damn great song. I'll take it. Number 81, Mama Said by Lukas Graham.
Mama said that it was quite alright. Our kind of people had a bed for the night, and it was okay. Mama told us we were good kids, and Daddy told us never listen to the ones pointing nasty fingers and making fun, 'cause we were good kids.
And now on the complete opposite note, let's talk about a song that's not remotely sexy at all, and the sort of follow-up from Lukas Graham that I kinda would have predicted. Let's get real here. No self-respecting manager or record executive would ever let them follow up 7 years with the abysmal Strip No More, so let's go with the one that interpolates Annie and hope to God that nobody remembers when Jay-Z did the sample way better with Hard Knock Life 18 years ago. But really, this isn't bad. The bouncy twinkle of the piano, the sort of come-up lyrical focus that, again, undercuts the drama when the second verse when they reassure us that it wasn't all really that bad. But where I think this song loses me is on the final chorus. Sorry, but that child choir is already grating enough, and when you pile in your frontman squealing his way through a harmony that's got no bass or sane counterbalance in it, it's just grating as all hell. Again, I don't quite dislike this song, but without the bombast and greater sentiment that made 70 Years actually kind of work for me, I can't see this doing nearly as well, and I'm kind of okay with that. Number 68, Girls Talk Boys by 5 Seconds of Summer.
When the girls talk boys, oh when the girls talk, when the girls talk boys, hey.
So let me briefly talk about movies for a second, because just over a week ago, I actually saw the Ghostbusters remake. I was actually planning on filming a vlog for it, but I just really couldn't come up with enough to say, so let's aim to keep this pretty short. There are a fair share of good jokes. Leslie Jones and Kristen Wiig do a remarkable job. Chris Hemsworth is an absolute riot, and I expect to see him in a lot of comedies over the next couple of years. And yet the entire film felt a little bit overlit, lacking in meatier, sharper comedy and satire, and desperately needing some of those slower moments to let the characters breathe a little bit more, maybe spend more time together. I was mostly ambivalent about Kate McKinnon's manic energy, but the real downer for me was Melissa McCartney of all people, who seemed to be underplaying the attitude when she didn't need to. But then again, as a summer romp, it was better than I expected. It would probably go over pretty great with the kids. Not better than the original Ghostbusters, but it was stronger than the cartoon, and especially Ghostbusters 2, because really people, that movie is terrible. So let's say it's a 7 out of 10 for what that's worth. I say all that because if I was looking for a glaring weak point, it would come in the soundtrack. Not the score, the soundtrack, which tends to be pretty much present in this film, which frequently came across as garish and far weaker than the original theme song. This is 5 Seconds to Summer's contribution to the soundtrack, and look, I've kind of softened on these kids, mostly because they've shown the aptitude to write rougher, more interesting music. They didn't write this, and as such, it barely sounds like a Five Sauce song at all, but I wouldn't say this is bad so much as it is very different and not quite the best for the group. For one, it's got the distinctive feel of 5 Seconds of Summer trying to be Maroon 5 circa the mid-2000s with the thicker bass and the choppier stabs at funk, but it's not a type of funk I think that stands out all that much to me, especially considering how sleek and tight it's trying to be, which might work with the pretty decent falsetto vocals, but doesn't really take advantage of the loose firepower that Five Sauce can bring to the table. And sure, the lyrics mostly fit in their mold, wondering if the girls are gossiping about them, and yeah, it's all so high school, but it definitely feels like the band is trying to conform to a sound that's a bit of an awkward fit for them. Not precisely bad, and I'll take the slightly sharper grooves over the gutless DNCE any day, but 5 Seconds of Summer, they're much better at pop punk than funk, so yeah, I'd stick with that. Number 47, Vice by Miranda Lambert.
Another bed I shouldn't crawl out of. To 7 a.m. with shoes in my hand. Said I wouldn't do it, but I did it again. And I know I'll be back tomorrow night.
Oh, well, this is awkward. For the longest time, I've been talking about the much-anticipated return of Miranda Lambert to give her side of the story in the much-publicized divorce from Blake Shelton. And I remember thinking that if she at all was the one guilty, and if all the foul rumors about her were true, she'd still be able to make a hell of a song out of it. And believe me, when I heard that her newest song was delving into the messy, dark aftermath where she owned all of it and framed it properly, I was excited as all hell for the song. And man, I wish I could like this a lot more than I do. I mean, I get the understatement of the vocals, the curdled, numb self-loathing as her reputation rots, and Miranda delivers the song perfectly, but there's no way around it. The production here is a disaster. The limp, echoing guitars over the oily gurgle of synth slathered over the hook, the gutless organ, the slapdash melodies with the deeper percussion trying and failing to add any foundation here. It doesn't even have any sort of solid groove to drive the squealing 4 bars of solo. I really hope this would connect, but man, it fell flat hard for me, and I sure as hell hope this isn't the direction and production that Miranda's gonna be taking for her next album, because really, she's way better than this. Number 17, Make Me by Britney Spears featuring G-Eazy. You know, it's been a long time since I've talked about Britney Spears, an artist whose career both will.i.am and Iggy Azalea couldn't kill. Third time's the charm, I guess, so now she's teamed up with one of 2016's most boring breakout artists with her new lead-off single. And you know, I'm so happy that Demi Lovato's Body Say also came out this week, because it's a prime example of how little Britney has evolved as a performer over the past couple years when playing in this vein. Like Demi, Britney's trying to play coy and entice the guy over, but her innuendo feels even more vague and nowhere near as pointed, not helped by a cooing, underwritten chorus where we got all the warbling auto-tune desperately needed to keep Britney on tune as the sandy trap percussion swamps out the rattling guitar and synthetic voices squealing out through the mix. There's something sleek or tight about this song, with whatever melodies on the hook being carried by a fuzzy mess of grinding synthesizers. And then there's G-Eazy, and well, I could go on about how he always wanted what was off limits and seemed to be trying to make Britney out seem like she's a dangerous woman, which I don't remotely buy. And then you realize with the rattling guitar, the glitchy effects, and the cavernous mix, it's a song that's desperately trying to play as a glossier version of Ariana Grande's title track Dangerous Woman from earlier this year. Well, that's another pop princess that handily outstrips Britney in the modern age, because it's the sort of phoned-in revival that has none of the tightness in delivery or production to be another hit. I've made excuses for Britney Spears before, and I do admit that she's got some songs I really like, but this, I'm sorry, it's not one of them. And finally, number 11, Rise by Katy Perry. come to think of it, while it's been a while since I've talked about Britney Spears, it might be even longer since I've talked about Katy Perry in any capacity too, which is kind of bizarre considering how thoroughly she dominated pop music for the first few years of the decade. And like with Prism and Roar, she's making her big return with yet another self-esteem anthem, which for the record has always been the most tedious side of Katy Perry's pop persona, and well, say what you will about Roar, at least at a melody. Seriously, are we gonna do this again? Drown out Katy's voice and the rest of the mix in so much reverb and pitch correction that any fragments of melody are so gutless and thin they've got no power whatsoever, and that's not even counting one of the most brittle trap snares I've heard all year. I'm not gonna deny that there's a certain ominous swell as Katy Perry rises out of the mix on the first verse, but the chorus is a classic example of a song getting louder instead of building to any sort of real groove or melodic impact. I thought you understood this, Max Martin. Don't you remember Larger Than Life or Since You've Been Gone or So What? My Life Would Suck Without You, Hold It Against Me, or Blow? All songs you co-wrote, and that's not even counting the songs you co-wrote for Katy Perry like Teenage Dream and Last Friday Night and Wide Awake. Even Roar hit harder than this. Not only is this a complete failure as a pump-up song, it's a colossal misfire for a return single for Katy Perry, with production that only seems to highlight her limitations and created by a writer and producer who is so much better than this. The writing is bog standard, the production is garbage. Skip this. So yeah, that was our week. Well, okay, up to the end, it was actually a pretty interesting week. Not all good, again, Rise by Katy Perry is easily getting the worst, with No Shopping by French Montana and Drake sliding in for dishonorable mention, but you know what, there were some decent songs here. I'm not gonna complain that much. Body Say by Demi Lovato just runs away with Best of the Week. I think I'm giving honorable mention to A Little More Summertime by Jason Aldean. He actually pleasantly surprised me, I have to say. I might actually like his upcoming album. Let's hope the quality stabilizes a little bit for next week as the summer lull continues to fall apart, but till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.